Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined tonight by Chris Morgan and Ricky Addington.
Rock on.
The Lord of the Rings podcast.
Yeah. We are the Bell Lost Souls podcast. This is going to be a great episode. I actually have a couple of special segments to insert here. The first one coming up, we're going to quickly introduce this segment. And this segment is with Sideshow Collectibles. These guys, go to sideshow.com. Check them out, all the bust. These guys are some incredibly talented artists, creative people, sculptors. Imagine, just awesome. When you're going to be blown away, go to the site, check it out. We're going to talk with them about a new game coming out that was recently Kickstarted. And it should be getting out to people that back the pledge later on this year. But it's Sideshow's first original property. They do a lot of sculpts for Marvel, Lucasfilms, DC, just about any kind of geek property that you've ever heard of. You can go to their site and check it out, and you will be impressed. It's amazing stuff.
I think the first place that I've seen them or seen their stuff was in coverage from San Diego Comic-Con years ago. They put up their statues and their busts right next to all of the, movie paraphernalia or whatever. And you think, oh, well, that's quite fitting. It works.
They get deep into kind of their philosophy on why they do what they do. And then we talk a lot about the game. I tell you how I encountered them and everything in the segment, so I won't spoil it for you and tell you twice. But that segment is about 45 minutes long. So check that out. And then we're going to come back with Ricky and Chris.
Oh my God, it's going to be great.
Hold tight.
Forge the Narrative is brought to you by Dicehead.com. www.dicehead.com. Games, hobby, supplies, and comics. They have it all.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special segment of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host. I'm joined today by a team from Sideshow. I'm Mr. Tom Gilliland.
You bet. How you doing?
Rachel Rubicek.
Hi.
And Matt Mullen.
Hello.
Thank you all very much for joining me. We actually met at Gen Con. We're going to talk a lot about a game that you guys had on Kickstarter, very successful game on Kickstarter. Your first, I believe, original property as a creative studio, Court of the Dead, Mourner's Call.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Con was a blast. But yeah, we were there repping that with our development partner, Project Raygun, which is a offshoot of USAopoly. And it was sort of a public unveiling. Folks had seen it on Kickstarter, but this was an opportunity for people to sort of see it, sit down and play it. And we got great feedback, great reviews. And it's it's always a nice opportunity to be able to showcase stuff to people in person. There's nothing that beats that.
To see people gush over it. This is no exaggeration. I felt like I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Of course, I'd never seen it before. I get up there, I see it. I'm no less impressed when I'm a foot away. The miniatures look amazing. The concept for the game looks awesome. And I felt like we had to get you guys on.
No, we had a great chat in the aisle and was looking forward to this. So glad we could hook this up.
So Tom, you're the Chief Creative Officer for Sideshow.
Correct.
And people can find you guys' work. It's on sideshowtoy.com.
Yeah, I think you can go Sideshow Toys, Sideshow Collectibles, or just straight Sideshow.
Yeah,
now.
just the
so
free
I think
Sideshow.
we're everything Sideshow. So I think we've got that locked down. That way you can see the sort of showcase of what the company's sort of core mission is about, which is really a big curation of pop culture figure icons and archetypes, ranging from all the major licenses, Marvel, DC, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, and all manner of other, sort of big iconic characters that have populated story, film, and comic for, the last 50 years plus.
These statues are amazing, and they're incredibly detailed, lifelike, and they range in sizes. Can you briefly tell me about some of this stuff, like what people can expect? Because when you go and see it, you're first going to be greeted by this amazing art and these lifelike statues, but there's a lot more to it than just that.
Well, we definitely trade in shock and awe, so that's kind of your first entry through the door. But what it is sort of a big celebration of figure collectibles, and they range from smaller 6-scale articulated figures, for lack of a better description, if you're not familiar with them, somewhat like G.I. Joes on steroids, in terms of the detail and the articulation. We have a lot of smaller statuary collectibles that are more desktop environment type things, ranging up to what is our sort of capital line, which is the premium format figure, which is a quarter scale figure, roughly 18 inches tall for a human 6-foot individual. They range in size based on the characters we're dealing with. These often are mixed media. They have fabric clothing that's been custom tailored to these small scale figures, a lot of metal, leather elements put in them, sometimes lighting features. Really kind of a throwback to where some of us started. I worked in makeup effects, and we used to do sort of these types of maquettes to kind of test prove makeups and costuming combinations pre-film. And there was a notion that, hey, this type of thing is something that, out from behind the scenes and into collectors' hands would be something quite special. And so we sort of built our business in that direction of celebrating not just pop icons, but these different art forms. And I think that that's, kind of a big survey of what you'll see on the site. There's 1-to-1 busts that are in life size. There's even 1-to-1 full figures that are sort of meticulous replications of various Star Wars characters, Darth Vader, Stormtrooper. We really do sort of swing a wide bat in touching on the things that are kind of in the popular vernacular of what's happening in film, comics, and otherwise.
And there's showpieces. I mean, these could be centerpieces in someone's room. I mean, this is like, especially with just the popularization of this kind of culture and superheroes and stuff. I think this could exist in a lot of living rooms today. This stuff is awesome.
Thank you. I think that's, part of the artistic goal is to make things of consequence. And I think things that sort of last. And I think that's part of the collector mentality, is to buy things that have a certain, dare I say, artifact kind of feel, in the sense that, someone really treasures that. You walk into their office room, entertainment area, and you can kind of see the characters that sort of resonate with them. I think that that's been part of the sort of archetype storytelling that Sideshow's kind of had in our relationship with collectors, is how can we create and connect people with things that do, strike that kind of chord, and I think that's either, whether it's superheroes that reflect the ideals, or maybe some of the darker or more villainous characters that represent, things like Vader, who has a certain theme of redemption or whatnot, or just the just a presence is enough to sort of suit someone's collectible sensibilities. So,
or in my Court of the Dead.
So, go ahead. What was that? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's like, or in my case, Court of the Dead, which I have in my house, and I guess I surround myself with my own work.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Is like going and designing these things. Because obviously you're designing it. I mean, you have something to go from, the concept from whatever the original artist was, or a movie, or something. But how does doing that start to transition into doing your own original work? Like, what kind of things do you bring with you to tell that story?
Well, one of the things that was important about the evolution of the company and was part of the original DNA was that we would be pursuing our own original, creations. This is something that, goes back to my whole creative existence, from early days playing Dungeons and Dragons or any number of tabletop games, and all the books I read, Elric, and different things like that always sort of churned ideas in my own head. And there was an aspect of needing to pay that off through our Sideshow genealogy as well. So after many years of sort of building the company in collaboration with the big licenses, that kind of, reminder went off in my mind that said, hey, you need to get back to paying that other sort of dream off. So, stepping towards IP with Court of the Dead was something that was part of that mission statement from early on, but was sort of delayed in its satisfaction. But stepping into that then, allowed us to do just what you said, step out and around from sort of canon reference beds that are obviously very strong and fixed properties like DC, Marvel, and create our own from the ground up. So assembling a team around that, and the ideas that I had that sort of formed the nucleus of the idea of this kind of dark fantasy anti-hero epic that, sort of a parable of the corruption of power, which is what sort of Court of the Dead is really about. You find that the All-Taker, or Death, is sort of this less a soul-sucking, mindless entity and more a demigod that finds himself in the unenviable position between a very corrupt or equally corrupt heaven and hell that's simply mining the moral realm for souls, and the destiny that he sort of foresees the moral world could attain if it was left to its own devices. So coming up with a sort of secret rebellion and how to reseat the celestial order is sort of the Underdog story of Court of the Dead.
That sounds awesome. So Rachel and Matt, as designers and then sculptors, what part do you play in bringing some of these things to life, from concept art, designing the concept art, to a sculpted figure? And then, you don't have to get necessarily too deep in the weeds of the mechanics of the sculpting, but like where does it all start? How does someone out there, if they had a similar goal, how would they go about doing it in the very beginning?
So the usual approach that how we start off with something is basically Tom comes to us and tells us an idea he has for a character or a location or a scene or some sort of design. And from there, Matt and I, usually what we'll do is a bunch of ideations, which are basically looser concepts for miscellaneous ideas. So we can do multitudes of them rather than providing just like one single image. And from there, we work with Tom and kind of just go further and finalize the design from that point. So there might be like an arm on one design that was nice, a head or a crate crest design on another, and kind of mash it together to make the finalized design. And from there, we could do much more detailed illustrations. So we can do much like, this is what the actual armor detail is. This is what their weapons look like. So even sometimes expressions and attitude they have. And from there, it really depends on what product it's going to be used for. If it's a statue, we'll do pose exploration. If we're going to be doing it for an illustration's sake, like our print program, usually from there we come up with compositions that will do the best to convey the narrative we want to have.
Do you guys have a background in art? How did you come about this? Is this something you've just always been naturally good at?
I went to school for animation, actually, and I didn't start drawing until I was about maybe 15 or 16 years old. I'm 26 now. And I went to school for animation in San Jose State, and I was thinking of going to, do animation for like DreamWorks or Disney or video games. And I really liked going to Comic-Con, and I saw Sideshow constantly and was like, this is so cool. I can't afford any of this, because I was a college student and I didn't have any money. Now that I just spend my paychecks on more statues.
That's fair. That's very fair. I think once people actually go to the website, they'll realize that they've been familiar with Sideshow for a long time. You guys have some incredibly epic pieces, so I encourage anybody listening to check it out. The front page, and as you get deeper, you can basically type in anything that you nerd out about into the search bar, and you're probably going to see something really cool. Because we're talking about the statues, and we talked about how tall they are and just the sheer kind of scale and epicness of them. But going to a board game, it seems like the scale shifts. What were some of the challenges along that way? And then how is it just the same? You shrink it electronically, or what are some of the conceptual things you have to change when you're going into this type of sculpting?
Yeah, good question. To say the different scales have different. It's a different canvas, so each canvas has to be sort of approached differently. And one of the things that I recognized when we were going to be working with miniatures was that we were going to have to make a shift. I certainly collect more than my fair share of miniatures. So whether it's 40k stuff or all the bolt action stuff that I'm doing for World War II, through anything else that strikes my fancy. There's things that I noticed about, certainly the paint styles and the way that things are sculpted that, things are bigger. They're a little bit more, they're not necessarily true human scale. They have kind of that epic scale portion. And what was nice was Matt, Mullen on staff had worked with smaller scale things prior and also understood that. So when we got this opportunity, and he can speak better to it, he was able to sort of step in and negotiate that transition.
Yes, I started out pretty much from school, Vancouver Film School, where I learned 3D. And my first jobs were actually within the miniature community, like doing Kickstarters and different, working with those guys. So
it's like someone would come to you with a concept for a design, you'd figure out how to make it work, and then they'd go to a Kickstarter with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
They'd be like, I have a bunch of these ideas, help me with designing them and stuff, and then sculpting them. And then, yes, exactly. They'd go to the Kickstarter. So then coming here, it's kind of awesome to get back to that, what kind of got me into Sideshow. Now I'm able to work with the same within Sideshow.
The art for this stuff is very unique. It's got a really good style to it. We're talking about about Mourner's Call specifically, did you guys do all the art in-house for that as well?
That is all through the team, yes. So you've got elements, a tremendous amount of elements from both Rachel and Matt. Another contributor that was a very significant mover in helping getting the property off the ground, Amilcar Fong, who's an artist from Argentina, originally from Cuba, was a huge driving force. We enlisted really famous painter Alex Horley, real well known for some of his work in comics, and done a lot of sort of rock and roll art for album covers with Rob Zombie and some Kiss stuff. That's who did the actual box cover and the sleeve covers that you see.
Okay.
We have Ian McDonald, who's one of our outside artists who helps us out, and Fabian Schlaga, I think. I'm terrible at pronouncing last names.
He'll probably send us a text.
Tom Nielsen, and who's from the Netherlands. So we've had a few freelancers who also helped us out with some art that have worked on Court before, and we brought them back in for it. Ivan, I'm definitely going to butcher his last name. Can you say?
If it's Koratorev.
There we go. He did the
He knows
map design.
that we get that wrong all the time, but he's a fantastic artist in Bulgaria. He does a lot of the comic art that you can see. We do some publications for Court of the Dead, one of which was an omnibus called Grave Tales. It was a sort of an amalgam of 8 different small comic stories. I think he did just about half of them. And he's just finished a 110-page graphic novel for us that's coming out at the end of the year called Shadows in the Underworld. It'll be a great story that'll also lend a little extra context to players of Mourner's Call when they get the game, because some of the themes in the comic tie to some themes that are directly a part of the game mechanic itself. Mm-hmm. But I think what Rachel's alluding to is, in order to create a game that has this kind of big broadcast that, can kind of grab someone's attention like yourself from, a distance with that kind of visual power comes from, sort of assembling an orchestra and then wielding it to best effect. And I think that was always my approach with Court, was to not, especially since it's sort of the underworld and it's intended to kind of encapsulate a lot of perceptions of what the underworld looks like in a sort of mythological kind of a way, to have a lot of different visual voices sort of speak to that had a commonality, but also had their own individual fingerprints, would be strong. So as an example, we had, even down to the 3D, working for us, Matt Mullen did some of the figures, whereas on the USAopoly Project Raygun team, Darren Donahue did all of the guild figures. So we sort of split the duties in order to, take on this Herculean task of accommodating a game that we really did want to see a tremendous amount of art. And a big part of Mourner's Call is, obviously game experience, but is a sort of introductory tool to, get a sense of what is going on in this Court of the Dead story.
It's a bit of a story, right? And I do want to ask you about that, if I can, with where did this, like the original thing of this, where did it come from? Was it a story? Was it a role-playing campaign? How did you come up with this? And then, what drove some of these very unique interpretations of things that people might be familiar with, like death, or the concept of death?
Well, the idea was really sort of genesis from my own imagination, fueled again by endless D&D campaigns that I've done, but largely things that I've been into, heavy metal music. I mentioned Elric novels earlier. I read those when I was about 14, and I was just blown away by the fact that you could have a hero in a book series that was kind of an anti-hero, which at about the same time I was introduced to Clint Eastwood movies. So this notion of like anti-heroism, and that there's these sort of shades of gray that exist between the idealism of good and the fall of evil, it was an important theme to me. And I think when we've done so much sort of superhero work here at Sideshow, one of the aspects of Court of the Dead for me was to kind of, first of all, pay off my own interest, but also sort of my reaction to kind of the superhero kind of team, and to sort of build a sort of dark fantasy epic that reflected, a different take on heroism. And that, in this kind of world where, everything's upside down, the tenets of what you think are good are corrupt and truly evil, and they're obscured, and the things that you would assume are wicked, like death, actually turn out to be the one element in the universe that's actually trying to pull for mortality. And so to sort of form this game story, and there's a story that backbones this entire thing that we're slowly working on through various publications. Currently, you can get a sort of universe handbook called The Chronicle of the Underworld, which kind of takes you through the entire underworld's culture, the reason why it is what's happening there, what Death's motivations are, how the underworld functions with sort of three factions, bone, flesh, and spirit, that sort of represent the different attitudes of the mourners, which are what the underworlders call themselves. So a lot of these sort of grave terms that are dark in our world are sort of a celebrated term in their world.
Are the mourners you mentioned like the superhero team of the underworld?
They're the good population of the underworld and the sort of the movers and shakers in the court of the dead. So the court is kind of the administrative function of the underworld, while the All-Taker or Death has to sort of constantly be maintaining the soul flow to keep the wicked celestials appeased. He built the court as an agent or a body of agents that then could affect his rebellion in secret. So while they're busy watching him like the FBI on a mob boss, he's got his agents sort of slowly but surely piecing the puzzle of how can they possibly take on this sort of split celestial order and survive, at the same time saving themselves and offering the mortal realm a new and more productive spiritual conclusion.
The reason I ask that is because when people go to check out the game itself, there are a series of unique characters. I think it says that you get 70 figures like in the initial box, and there are a collection of them that are unique, which I assume are like the higher stake characters, the characters that the players play.
So the game kind of has like a couple of levels to it, and it kind of cascades down through that hierarchy we were talking. So the big players in the court are, sort of the giant political movers in the city of Ilverness, which is the capital in the underworld. So those are represented by big format cards. Those are cards that are part of each round. You're drafting them, and you're sort of affecting your influence in the game, and your role in the game is you are a new mourner in the underworld, one with influence and one that's looking to make a contribution. So you're sort of using your wiles and skills to try to help the rebellion, while at the same time trying to make yourself the sort of MVP of the rebellion that's forming in the context of the game.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So
that's
the major
cool.
purpose is represented by cards. Some of those cards have a miniature component attached to them that actually plays into a mechanic that places onto the board. The second run of that are kind of the mourner cards that are in the game, and they represent the sort of champions of the three factions that are sort of doing the day-to-day work of things. And then the bigger body of miniatures are the sort of guild organizations in the underworld that sort of influence the way life works. And so each faction has sort of two guilds that work with it. And these are sort of the then dudes on the map figures that are placed to kind of show the area of control aspects of how the city is kind of moving, influence in its allegiance. And the entire game sort of turns on getting these squabbling kind of factions to kind of work together to sort of form the unity that's critical to being the backbone of a successful rebellion. So as a player, you're trying to play your factional elements kind of both for and against your other players or whatnot in an effort to affect this unity. And meanwhile, these guild figures are taking up the sort of dudes on a map kind of role in the game, while you're also then doing a sort of card draft that sits in front of you and is sort of augmenting your power pool. So there's a lot of different mechanics that are in the game that I think appeal to a number of different audiences. You like miniatures, there's definitely an aspect of that that's a potent part of the game. You like card draft, there's that. Resource management is another part of the game. And, if you also like the aspect of kind of collaborative, competitive kind of crossover games, it gives you a chance to kind of play both ways.
That was my next question. Is this like a quasi cooperative game?
Yes. So, you can play cooperatively, but I think it plays a little more spiritedly and certainly more fun when you're throwing some elbows along the way.
No matter what, in the end, one person's going to win the game, but it is suggested to work together as at best opportunities you can, so not everyone is screwed over if some horrible event with the Celestials or the Rakers, who are their inner demons or inner monsters, dealing with that.
Yeah, the game kind of has that. So the players themselves are up against a kind of rock and a hard place mechanic where you have the Celestial suspicion meter, which is sort of a record that tracks as the mourner players start to build power. that's kind of creating a signature that the Celestials are taking note of. So
does something terrible happen when it?
Exactly. When that meter spikes, there's some dire effects for all the players. And on the opposite side of the board is the Dredge Grip meter, which represents, the Underworlders are sort of created in a destructive nature, and part of their heroism is to sort of live and exceed and live towards an ideal of heroism and not in their base destructive nature. So the Dredge Grip kind of represents that kind of clawing voice at the back of their heads that's always trying to, unhinge the weak or the susceptible. And so as the Underworlders express power, the darker and the sort of power corruption sort of parable of the story comes to play, in that the mourners can become susceptible to this as well. So you're trying to build a rebellion to fight a great power. You have to do so by building power, but by building power, you're playing to your dark basins. You've got to be careful about managing that, teeter-totter.
These are some weighty concepts.
To make it simple, just think of it as you're playing Dr. Jekyll and you can unleash your Mr. Hyde.
No, I get it. I think I get it. Yeah, but I think I saw a playthrough where the game only takes about maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. I think the game generally runs 3 or 4 cycles, more often 3. There's quite a number of turns per player within each cycle. You basically play until you sort of exhausted your, whatever your resource pool or your play is, and you pass, and everyone passes. It then moves to the next, to the next phase.
Is when you pass part of that strategy too? Like if you're on a path that is given too much celestial notice, you might need to cool it off for a bit.
Absolutely. Or I may want to know what, Matt and Rachel are up to, so I'm going to pass off to see what they do, because maybe I need them to play a certain card that I'm kind of waiting to capitalize on. And
I've done that to you.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty clear on how to turn the knife on each other. But so the game's fun in that regard, and then it definitely moves fast. It's not a board game where you've got kind of like I go, you go mechanics where you have to sit for long periods of time with someone else sort of painfully, calculates their strategy. And the game kind of encourages sort of fast, think on your feet kind of moves. So the game rounds are very spirited. They do bounce along. You don't have a lot of time to sort of sit and check your phone while you're playing. And I think that helps contribute to a gaming experience that you can get, done in under an hour and a half and, play in your average gamer's game night or otherwise.
We'll still get into it. I mean, you can identify with some of these concepts and characters, I think is kind of what I'm picking up anyway. And really slip into it, I think.
Well, that was definitely one of the gags. I mean, there's a big cast in Court of the Dead, and they're not all as equally weighted in their sort of importance as the Rebellion forms, but they all have a role to play. And what's fun about the way the game's designed is that, as we've been playing the behind-the-scenes versions of the game, since we've been leading up to, the final delivery version, which is totally on track for December, the thing that's been interesting is that no 2 games ever really play the same. You always have an option to, you start the game by choosing which faction you're going to be aligned with, the draft of what cards you do or
as
don't.
An individual player, right? Like you don't make a group choice. It's
all. There's the big cards sort of draft in each turn. Your opportunity to get the big influencers changes. So each round has a giant variable to it. And then your sort of the mourner deck, which is the basic champions that sort of stay in your arsenal, are sort of a random draw as well. So if you're looking for certain ones, you may have to kind of like force your play in that direction to try and extract them from that deck. And so, each game, you can always play it differently. You can play a different faction if you've kind of played you've been playing Spirit for a couple of times. You play the game from a bone perspective. You'll see the game in a different way. They have slightly different, objectives. Every player gets a sort of hidden objective that is their sort of, secret MO for the game.
And that's drawn differently each time. It's not like the bone have this objective each time.
It's part of like your initial draft. So you get different objectives, one from each faction. So you choose which faction you're going to go with, and that then determines which of those 3 you've drafted is going to be the secret, your motivation. And that's a sort of points modifying special element.
That goes into the win at the end. Like you be both all on separate paths and be close, but you satisfied your secret objective first, and so you win.
And that's something that, you can be watching for. So you don't really know what other players' secret MOs are, but you definitely know what their on-table motivations can be. And that's where you can kind of get your poker read on what's going on.
And an example of some of the objectives can be is that, like, let's say you're in the Flesh faction, one of your objectives could be have as many locations on the board as possible in your control by the end of the game. If you do, you're going to get like a bunch of points that way. Or to have as many unity as possible by the end of the game, like trying to get these coins and working together as much as you can. Or some of them are just having the most mourner cards. So and trying also not to let your opponents know what your objective is at that point too.
Is that like one of the tertiary or a third way to end the game? Secret objective done, Celestials destroy you, or you bring about unity to the universe? So is that the three things?
The game really plays out against the unity token pool, which is, once the last one is gone, the game is ended. So in early incarnations, we had it where if the celestial tracks spiked, the underworld fell. But we found that one of the downsides to making that was that it created a game experience where if somebody at the table was having a bad day or didn't like the fact that they were maybe in distant third or fourth place, they could essentially sabotage the game by just playing into the Celestials and
sending a note, hey, look at me, Celestial.
Exactly. So we modified that. So I think the aspect now, though, is there's still some very punishing effects that influence all the characters. So there can be strategic reasons to let the meter spike once. You're going to pay the hardest sort of penalty if you're the one who does it, but there may be just enough, collateral damage to offset your opponent to give yourself a chance to kind of, rebound back from that. But, so that's, sort of a demonstration of some of the weird and quirky strategies that can and are developing as we continue to playtest, or not so much playtest at this point, but just play and experience the game from different seats and with different strategies.
You mentioned this is on track to be open to the public in December. I mean, this is people have already Kickstarted this. Again, very successful, almost a $500,000 on Kickstarter alone. And that doesn't count, as far as I know, any late pledges or whatever, but you say you're on track for delivery in December.
In fact, just to be specific, so that's when the Kickstarter the backer fulfillment happens.
Got it.
The destiny of the retail play is still something to be determined. So there were a fair number of game store and wholesale accounts that were able to purchase into the Kickstarter campaign. So you should be able to check in with your local game store and see if they've got their markers in on some units or look around for them that way.
I will be calling them right after this.
Late pledges open up until the last day of Gen Con. That's obviously passed, so that's closed down now. So basically the game is en route to development or to fulfillment at this point. And in fact, yesterday we had all the cards, the final boards, the final player boards, the final box art, the vast majority of the game in, and everything was essentially approved to move forward. And I think we've already looked at a lot of the 3D pieces. So everything is magnificently on track for delivery in December. So we're really happy with that progress. Working with Project Raygun, USAopoly, they're a long tenured company as well as we are. They understand the critical importance of sort of paying off your bets when you tell your constituents or your backers when you're delivering a game. And so far everything is on course as was originally projected. So I think everybody's going to be, satisfied with, not just the delivery time, but also most certainly the quality of the contents inside.
Well, that's another question. I mean, obviously these miniatures are very finely detailed, and will that be what people get in their hands? And I mean, obviously the answer is yes, but I mean, do you also see people painting them?
Well, I have done some painting on a few of them already. Matt did the very large Malavestros, who is sort of the fourth wall breaking character in the Court of the Dead and serves as kind of the concierge of the story often, but he plays a fun role in the game in that he sort of disrupts play on the game board. I painted that piece, and Matt did a fantastic version of the All-Taker that I painted as well, and I'm looking forward to kind of slowly working through I don't know, what is it now, 60 some odd guild figures, which
and here in Odium and the Raker.
Oh, and I haven't even gotten to that. Yeah. So I think that definitely, I think that's encouraged. I mean, I see that certainly a lot of other board game, miniature game hybrids where that's encouraged, and a lot of people fulfill that. And I think that that's a great way to bring some added magic to a game that you're enjoying, is to bring in that sort of hobbyist element. I know that, it's a huge part of the miniature tabletop wargaming I do is, half the time is spent in the paint room, the other half actually fighting the battles that,
Well, we talk all the time about how the percentage of time we actually play with our models is how little it is compared to how much time we spend putting them together, painting them, thinking of the stories, writing an army list or something. I mean,
well, when you're dealing with 40k or any of the other big tabletop monstrosities, that is most definitely the case. I mean, I know all my World War II antics are infinitely disproportional in the studio than they are on the actual battlefield.
I'm still reading through the core book of Sigmar.
oh, the second edition, I mean, that recently came out. It's absolutely awesome.
I think that, we're speaking of inspirations and whatnot. I mean, I think Games Workshop's, incredibly, I don't even think deep even is sufficient a word to, identify the level of lore and mythology that they have backed their universe with and even, recreated in several cycles. I think that's always been a huge inspiration to me reading, the various art books and a lot of the lore books, as well as a lot of the, Black Library novels. That sort of fuel the mythology behind the tabletop. And I think that that's a pretty important part of the gaming experience is that not just a good game that's fun, but is one that, can reach out and capture your imagination through its themes and its, wonderful character interpretations. And I think that was something that was really a huge motivating force for me for Court of the Dead in that, Mourner's Call is certainly the game that we're talking about today and that we're delivering in December, but that is hardly the vista or the end of the horizon line for the property as it relates to gaming. And, certainly my miniatures fascination has got to be something that's paid off a little stronger.
So you can see yourself making more installments of this Court of the Dead universe game.
Yeah, I mean, when I was creating the piece, as much as I was, creating the story, it was also to create sort of a hub mechanic that would have an endless number of spokes. So we're already pursuing that through our own 3D things. We've now got gaming, publishing, comics. I'm looking always for other interesting ways to express the property's prerogatives. But I think gaming is a powerful engine for original creations at this point. It was something I really walked away from Gen Con with a very strong reinforcement was just how much original thought was on display across the trade show floor. Certainly throughout the dealer's room was, very passionate creators were there repping their games. And I was familiar with a large number of them, but a few surprises were certainly in there. But I think the aspect of being able to create a neat story that people can not just read and enjoy, but also invest into. And I think when you've done something that gets people to want to sit down and eat up your lore and then actually spend their hobby time, painting or actually playing your games or, I think that's a powerful mechanism. That's a Kool-Aid that I could drink all day.
Well, I mean, you definitely check off all the boxes with Court of the Dead. I mean, you've got a backstory, you've got great figures, you've got a theme that translates into what sounds like some pretty original gameplay. I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this.
I'm looking forward to that just as much. Because we're still playing in-house with this sort of pre-production pieces and some of the older components or whatnot. So when we get a chance to kind of, and this last year at Comic-Con, we had a pretty close to final game board, and it was a nice experience to see how the game has evolved from, which is interesting because it's very crude in its early days. I mean, almost just, line drawings and on whatnot on a piece of paper. And then when it becomes full color, yeah, exactly. When it's full color, when you've got miniatures that, we've seen coming across Matt's computer in the digital form, and now we've got them physically present on the table. It's a big payoff. And I think, building a game is not a small prospect. To see it come to fruition and all the pieces kind of fall into place is massively rewarding. And so we certainly can't wait to share that with the gaming community.
Well, what you can tell from looking at the stuff on Sideshow, looking at this game and whatever, is you guys have vision. I mean, there's and seemingly no shortage of it. Like, what do you see, if you can tell me a little bit, what's next, maybe for this game, I guess, because, obviously you want to get it out in people's hands first. And then if you can tell me, what's next for Sideshow in general.
Well, Mourner's Call is definitely the flagship in the gaming department. But, our ongoing gaming, outlook is really more appetite now than anything else, but we're looking to that future. There's 2019 is going to be the year of Mourner's Call. Beyond that, we're looking for other titles and other ways to express the property. As you said, there's a lot of themes, and I'd like to do different gaming experiences that explore a lot of them. Mourner's Call is kind of the big 10,000 mile up view of the whole world. I'd like to dive down into some of the more personal aspects of that. I think some of that is being fulfilled right now. We're working on the first novel that is illustrated. Rachel's doing a lot of the illustrations. Fabian Schlager's done a lot of the painting inside. This is a story about a character named Demethyl, who's the Reaper General, kind of the head of the sort of Reaper forces, and which serves a dual role of sort of having to sort of be the custodians of the harvest of mortal souls, but at the same time serves as kind of the Excalibur Knights, or Knights of the Round Table of the underworld, keeping its interests protected. So it's sort of his origin story, but it is as much that as it is a origin of the underworld and the Court of the Dead and its rebellious mission. And so we're drafting against that. Right now, Rachel and Matt are both drawing some big narrative stuff that's for later in the story. So we're working on publications in depth. The main story has kind of a Rise, Conquer, Rule trilogy. It brings in a character you'll see in the game called Shard, the Mortal Trespasser, who sort of serves as the sort of Alice in Wonderland mortal that gets drawn into the underworld and comes, sees the truth for what it is and realizes that there's a bigger place to play in this game. And so we'll follow the story sort of through her eyes, and the entire crew is working on aspects of that right now. So those novelizations are underway. This first one is due about midpoint 19, and the others will follow beyond that. Beyond that, we're also exploring a lot more of these full story comic or graphic novel projects. So looking for ways to, project the story and round out the mythology beyond what you can find in the Chronicle, which is, I think the only thing that's missing from the Chronicle in terms of what it's telling you is the game system that lets you play it as a pen and paper role-playing game, which is certainly something that is a box for me to check. And I know that Rachel has gotten into Dungeons and Dragons the last year. I don't know if Matt is going to reveal his.
So when am I going to play the Court of the Dead?
It's too late. Everyone knows you guys are big nerds. It's fine. You're in good company here.
That's the biggest secret. So,
if anyone has their kind of fires ignited as much as I do, where is the best place for them to go find out information on the Court of the Dead?
Well, a good place to go, you can go to courtofthedead.com. That gives you a bit of a primer on, the main members in the court. It's got some summaries of the big picture kind of, point of view. Beyond that, I would direct you to the Chronicle of the Underworld. It is a big 260-page, lavishly illustrated hardcover book. It really does take you through the mythology, the origin of the underworld, and the big picture consequences. And then it takes you all the way down to the sort of street level of what fashion and, practices and sort of philosophies haunt the underworld. And that will give you a really good view of what's up.
The social media as well.
Yep.
Our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook accounts. We also have posting events that are coming up that we're going to be at, or fun little trivia facts and process and where certain products are in the stage of development, etc.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially if you love the 3D, we've got on Instagram to a great extent, and to Facebook slightly less, but quite a bit of like in-process sculpting stuff that shows both digital and physical sculpt work in progress. Shows you a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. So folks that really dig the physical aspects of the artistry that goes into these types of things can get quite a view from checking that out.
I think that'd be great, because people get these ideas and they think, oh, I will go and do my own game, but they don't know where to start. They don't know the sheer work that goes into it, which you have to be prepared for. So I think seeing some of this and hearing things like this is really beneficial to folks.
Oh, I'm glad. I think there's a pay it forward kind of debt to be paid when you get a chance to get up on the big stage and do your thing, to give others an opportunity to do that as well. If you could be inspirational to others, I feel like that's the ecosystem of gaming. So.
Man, that's awesome. I will put these links in the show notes so people can check them out, follow them along, and this as they'd like. Would it be okay if I came and touched base with you guys later as we get closer to delivery, when people start playing the game, and maybe as you have you can talk more as things form up starting for next year?
Oh, absolutely, by all means.
I'd love to tell you secrets of how to win the game.
I'm gonna eventually have a favorite character, and I'm gonna need to know how to win.
I'm not sure I can be as helpful. I always end up with the bullseye over my head since everyone wants to take me out. So that's
what you got to do.
Share of wins.
Go for the Unity tokens.
Well, Tom, Rachel, Matt, thank you all very much for coming and spending the time with me and talking to me about this. Again, I'm super pumped about it. Can't wait to know more. Can't wait to eventually play the game. Is there anything else y'all like to cover before we wrap up?
Well, I think we couldn't end without giving credit to, Pat Marino, who was the game designer of Mourner's Call, who really, really, committed himself to property and digested the mythology and, worked with him to extract a game that was really true to the story and the messaging I was after, with fun and interesting mechanics that, were all, a big part of his wheelhouse. The crew over, the extensive crew at Project Raygun that backed this up. Arlo, who did all the graphic design of the game, was, he took our artwork that I felt really proud of, and everybody here feels the same, and he took it to another level in terms of its presentation. The rest of the team over there, from their, the fulfillment, the additional game design work, everything about what they did was just terrific. And I think that, this game couldn't obviously happen without them. It is their game. We licensed it to them. And I think we did very well by doing so. And they fulfilled the mission statement wonderfully, and I think that huge amount of credit's due there as well. So,
as well as to our backers, who obviously made the game possible.
That most definitely. On the Kickstarter backers, you guys were awesome. I think there were some definite standouts that had reached out, there's it's a fun bit that everybody can, who isn't maybe familiar with it, you can go to courtofdead.com, look up the faction quiz. I think there's probably a link for that we can provide. Takes you there. You can take that test, sort of tells you what faction you're probably most aligned with, but there's a benefit to doing so in the form of a little package that gives you a faction allegiance, thing. That can give you a bit of a discount on getting, say, the Chronicle of the Underworld, which a lot of backers did. And then they hit the comments section with so many lore questions. I was having a blast answering them every day. There was even a college professor that had done a sort of breakdown on the entire mythology and wrote a sort of 5-paragraph summary of it that I felt was better than anything I could have ever come up with myself.
Was that the paragraph in the comments section?
Yeah, he had a big stretch.
Oh.
I think his name was Joseph. I don't know, obviously, everybody's name for Kickstarter. But anyway, we had a fantastic community that embraced the property and really helped us, fill the ranks of the underworld. And I think our appreciation of them is what we're looking to, really pay off with a thank you of delivering a game experience that they're really going to be stoked with.
Thank you.
It sounds awesome. It sounds like you've got something really special here as far as lore and how, again, it translates into a dynamic gameplay that's repeatable.
Oh, yeah. You could play it 20 times and not really see the same themes and mechanics coming up again as everybody tries something different.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be awesome. We're recording on a Friday, so I'm going to wish you guys a good weekend, and we will talk again very soon.
All right.
Good.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Right on, Paul.
See you later.
Have a good night.
You're listening to Forge the Narrative.
Yo, everybody, we are back. Still got Chris and Ricky here.
Sorry, that was your response.
After this segment, I also have a spot with Gary Frank, who's a community organizer and player in the Midwest, in the Chicago area, talking about a big tournament that he's running. It's an annual tournament. They're in their third year. I say Gary's, we talk about this on the segment, but he's a community organizer. It's a very competitive area in Chicago, but still great people. Check him out if you can. Go to the tournament if you can. He's going to talk about it here after this segment.
I'm going to be honest with you. I always get a little mad about Chicago 40k players because when you go all the way to Adepticon, I drive 12 hours to get there, and I'm playing somebody, and I'm like, oh yeah, how was your trip in? Where are you from? He's like, oh yeah, I'm from Chicago. I'm like, oh, this is like a local thing for you. And they're like, yeah.
It sounds like a really arbitrary reason to hate somebody.
It's so annoying. I drove 12 hours.
That's how hobby jealousy works.
Yeah.
We published a battle report. It's an extremely short form battle report, largely because I forgot to record one of the rounds.
It's kind of a key component of the battle report.
Look, we're getting better.
The People's Murphy at his most professional.
One of my best playtest buddies, incredibly competitive guy. It's how I get ready for tournaments. Came over, we played, we recorded the game. He was playing Yannari. and with Aliatox, so he's got, basically all the rules. He has every single rule.
I've heard they're good.
Except, he didn't have a Vect in there. So that was the only thing he was missing, I think, from the list. But it's an incredibly stout list. And I was playing Space Wolves, Imperial Guard, and a Knight Valiant.
Oh, did you do the lightning dance? Please tell me you did the lightning dance.
I did. But, I mean, in true TPM form, 2 of my Rune Priests periled on the time they came in from the drop pod.
There you go. See, that's why I don't use Psychers. Just don't use Psychers, and you never perils.
I don't need that kind of negativity in my life, Ricky.
I was trying to, weaken a squad with a smite. Of course, I periled. Let me just do it one more time. Periled. From the next Rune Priest. And I'm like, whatever, Najal's Living Lightning. Let's go for it. And then did the Living Storm or whatever it's called, and took out a squad and a half of Dark Reapers. He had 3 squads of Dark Reapers in the list.
Oh, so a nice fluffy narrative list.
Super fat squad and then 2 3-man squads.
Now, that raises a question, though, how did you get close enough to drop that power off?
Drop pod!
I understand the principle behind drop pods, Paul Murphy. there were no screens, and did he not have a Farseer to interrupt you and blast you off the table?
Yes,
fairness,
one Farseer.
In fairness, guys, can we just acknowledge the fact that in 8th edition, who plans for a drop pod? When
everybody plans for a drop pod, but they also plan for 100 extra points of someone's army because you just jump pack that. And you save yourself some points.
Well, again, there's different ways to do things, especially in missions. And if you have a different objective, such as delivering 3 potent psychers with a lot of aggressive powers into a certain position, drop pods. I'm not saying they're for everyone. I was trying them out. I will say I was a lot more impressed with the drop pod than I was the Thunderwolves. And, that kind of confirmed the suspicion of what we had when we were doing the original review. Well, and I shouldn't say confirmed. The Eldar shoot a lot, and we know that. And the Thunderwolves basically ran out there, and they did kill an Autarch. And an Autarch can be a real problem, with just how mobile and how aggressive that they are. But then they just don't stand up really well. So that's what I'm talking about. So the Dark Reapers and everything had to focus on them. He had to try to commit to 2 different areas, and that's what the Knight did. The Knight gave me a little bit of insulation. Now, with die rolls being what they were, he actually fell one of the Soul Burst. We traded. I don't know what we were drinking. Well, I know what we were drinking, but it must have had some brain leech worms in it. That was his assumption. I'll blame that on the missing 1 round also.
Were there 2 rounds that were missed, or just the 1?
Just the 1.
I'm starting to wonder if the round, if you forgot, quote unquote, or if it has been expunged.
Well, you see, I thought things were going real bad for me.
We're not going to post this.
We're just going to quit here. And then I turned it back around. I'm like, let me get the camera out. No, it was an incredibly close game, and had anything gone, too a little bit skewed one way or the other, then the outcome would have been different. But we pretty much tied. I think I was up by 1 point at the end using the ground control. We were playing ITC Mission 1, and ground control, Headhunter, and Old School are what we both picked. And of course, trying to play that we're going to have more units at the end of the game than the other one. And I don't know what I was thinking picking that.
I don't know what you were thinking either.
But it worked out. It worked out. The Knight, let me tell you, when you roll 15 plus for your conflagration cannon 3 rounds in a row, life is good.
It does work.
Survey says.
So life is good. But it was fun. It's the first time I really played with the Knight. It was the second time that I've kind of messed around with the Space Wolves and their powers, and I feel like the Thunderwolves are situational, and I don't know if you want to spend that many points on something that's that situational.
You run into the same problem kind of in microcosm with units like Sanguinary Guard or Wraith Guard or things that, on paper, it seems a little bit easier to justify spending the points on. We think, these things are going to survive a little bit better. They're a little tougher to kill.
They all had storm shields. They had multiple wounds. They have a lot of attacks. They have the attacks to the rider and then attacks to the mount. But when you look at a 4-man unit and it's almost 300 points, But I did. In my mind, I had the fantasy of they're going to run up with that knight and just be wreaking all kind of havoc. And then I'm going to drop all the rune priests in the backfield. And they're going to destroy all this stuff. Now, Murder's Hurricane did a lot of damage, but that's also that you're looking to roll 6s, but he had 20-man Guardian Blob, which he also, he deep struck, by the way.
So I would say, when looking at the Thunderwolves, if we imagine 40k list building as a car lot, then, the Thunderwolves are the ones the used car salesman is going to be like, hey, spend your points here, I'll get a really good commission, but it's not really the best car.
I just visualized like a bunch of Thunderwolves just lined up, different colors.
Yes, smacks them on the butt. This thing will get you so many attacks.
Were you going to ask what would you spend those points on?
That's what I was going to ask is if the Thunderwolves are out, what's in?
Well, I actually had 2 rhinos in a drop pod in this list. And I was able to create like a pretty good wall with some line of sight blocking terrain to use to my advantage. Because I also had some mortar squads and stuff, and I was trying to protect the knight a little bit. I thought that one of the knight's biggest weaknesses is things that can chip away at its wounds from range and get up and assault it, and had that power to take it down turn 1, then I'd be in some problems. So I was thinking about ways to screen and, whatever. And I thought mobility, let me put some rhinos in here. And I had 5-man Grey Hunter squads. Blood Claws might be the way to go and just having fat units of Blood Claws. Because
I don't think I would have worried so much about a Valiant getting charged though with a conflagration cannon auto hitting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be welcoming that.
Well, okay, so things like the Autarch have a Banshee mask. Now, it wasn't necessarily tailored to fight Will's list, but you are going to encounter this style of list. At almost any tournaments. If you're doing well, you're going to encounter it at some point during this.
Yeah.
And there are some things that do deny Overwatch, like
Blood Angels,
Banginius, like the Autarch with the Banshee mask. I mean, there are things that deny the Overwatch, and so whatever. It was a little bit of insurance, but I do think I would probably not be concerned with the Knight running up with any kind of backup. I think the Thunder. I don't know what I was thinking. Knight and Thunderwolves making some glorious charge and killing everything in the army.
It looked cool anyway.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. But so probably more stuff, like especially playing the ITC missions, more stuff to hug the ground, be a little bit more difficult to maybe dig out of cover and stuff and have some firepower. I mean, lots of bolter shots, plasma guns, a little bit more of the bells and whistles, a little less on the big look at me unit and shoot. Because now granted, the Thunderwolves have a 3+ invulnerable save with storm shields. But there's still just not that many models when the entire opponent's army just has these 4 models to kill.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Every time I put a storm shield on something, I can't roll higher than 2. So that's kind of my luck.
And they cost
take
more
the storm shield
on the
away.
Thunderwolves,
I'll roll
right.
5s all day. As soon as I put a 3-up invul, I ain't making that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So again, I did like them, and they were able to put out a lot of damage, especially because the Space Wolves, like I put Power Fist on all of them because the Space Wolves hit one better on the turn that they charge or are charged. And that was awesome. You kind of get in the habit of needing 4s with your Power Fist or whatever, but not on those guys. I felt like I was doing a lot of work.
Yeah, there's something really crushing about knowing that normally you need 2s to hit.
Space Wolves, on the other hand, pretty good in that area. And when you're fighting against Toughness 3 and Toughness 4 stuff, then, you're wounded on 2s and 3s a lot more often.
Very true.
Knight, I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything new. The Knight was a big MVP, largely because of the high rolls on the conflag cannon, but also because I just, stonewalled the saves in turn 1. He wasn't able to put any wounds on the Knight in turn 1.
Now, were you running it with the 3+ invulnerable save and all the bells and whistles?
Yes.
Okay.
Made it a character, gave him the Warlord trait to increase his save to a 4+, and I was fully prepared to rotate the ion shields all the time.
Well, like you should.
I was all hype on Sally Forth with this guy, but you can't do that. You can't do that.
Where is Sally Third?
Maybe that's what you need for a Dominus class. But the Sally Forth cannot be used on the Dominus class knights.
Oh boy.
That's unfortunate.
It really was. I was like, because I was thinking about the game, of course, leading up to it. I'm like, I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna drop pod in. Knight's gonna run out of the corner. Well, let me just check that out and see if you can actually do that.
Yeah, we've been my buddy and I have been just laughing at the Knight Acheron using or full tilt, because if you make it Raven, an Acheron is going to run 14 plus 2d6 inches, and then shoot its assault flamer, and auto hit everything, and then still charge. So there's some fun stuff in there with knights, but I have yet to sally forth with anything yet. Like I keep thinking I'm going to do it, and then I'm like, that's all my command points.
What we're able to showcase in this battle report, even though it is very short, like the clips we made, actually turns out to be like 12 minutes after you cut down everything and just show what we showed. There's actually a really cool moment where we kind of showcase the hostage taking, as it were, with a unit to lock a unit in close combat so you can't fall back, preventing that unit from being shot at. And he did this with a unit of shining spears. And then I'm able to show like one of the sacrifice plays that I made. Like I can tell that he's going to try to run up and cast some shenanigan psychic power or whatever. So I actually put my Primaris Psyker up as far as I could to be able to be in deny range when he came up to be aggressive with his psychic powers. So you get to see a couple of moves that maybe you haven't seen before, or maybe that wouldn't occur to you, because like the first couple of turns in 40k are the most critical. Again, this is not news or whatever, but you see games either go real long or they're real short in 40k. And if you can just make those first couple of turns go a little bit better for you, then you're going to have better games in the long. It might actually be a game you could do like this game did and kind of claw back into it, fight your way back into it, and try to make it a game.
Right. So I got a question. I don't know how many games you've gotten in with Space Wolves, but like, where do you think they stand as far as Marine books go? Where do you think the hierarchy is on them now? Yeah. Obviously, like Blood Angels they got hit hard, so those are your your golden goose.
It's hard to deny the power of like a really stout Gilliman list.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, because they're, with all the rerolls, a reroll of everything, you're just going to convert a lot more often, and you can get wins out, and that's the kind of list that you can take to any tournament and expect to do okay. I put Space Wolves in second. I mean, we're talking about out of all the other chapters, Blood Angels and Dark Angels, I'd put Space Wolves right under Ultramarines, specifically a Gilliman list. And
is that due to the psychic power that they're bringing?
Well, it's because like the Space Wolf power, like the strength of the Space Wolves is not dependent upon a single stratagem.
Yeah, they seem more versatile to me. Like Blood Angels had their thing got taken away, and now they basically just have Banguinius. Dark Angels I just call it Codex Weapons of a Dark Age, because I'm a Dark Angels fanboy, but let's be honest, if you take weapons from Dark Age, why are you playing them? It's they're the best plasma in the game, and my God, they're amazing at it, but that's kind of it, right? So
yeah, that's the same kind of problem with Blood Angels lists now, is you've got Captain Smash as your one-trick pony.
Yeah.
It just telegraphs, like there's no...
You know exactly what's coming. It's when I play my knights, anytime I see Blood Angels in the list, I know I'm probably going to lose a knight on turn one, because they're going to move twice, charge a knight. I'm not going to overwatch it. They're going to swing. If they don't kill me, they'll honor the chapter, or they'll only in death. Either way, that knight's gone, right? So
it's going to keep banging until it's out.
Yeah. So you pretty much know what's coming with that Blood Angel when you see a Blood Angel on a list. But I think you're probably right, though, right? Like, I mean, right now it seems like Space Wolves are, gosh, I don't want to say the most, but they feel like they've got, if not the most, one of the most versatile Space Wolf books.
They do.
I think versatile is a really good word for it.
Well, we talked about like the Thunderwolves are a lot of points, but the rest of the stuff in there is not a ton of points comparatively for what you get, and you're not relying on one thing. Like, yeah, we talk about Living Lightning and the Storm, like that is an amazing power, but if it just didn't happen, then you're still shooting Living Lightning and Murderous Hurricane and Jaws the Werewolf. I mean, like you're going to be racking up the mortal wounds.
Just what's the stratagem for ignoring the minuses to
keen
like
senses,
to shooting stuff? Yeah, all these things that you have. Like I could just as easily see somebody building a long-range shooting Space Wolf army with a little bit of psychic and a little bit of assault heavy Space Wolf army with a little bit of, I feel like Space Wolf players are in a very good place right now to actually like enjoy the models that they've got on their shelves. So
there are stratagems that we're talking about are 1 and 2 point stratagems. So like playing against the Dark Eldar, you're like, go ahead, vect it up, dude. Like just keep burning your 3 for my 1 pointers. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
that's one thing that the Eldar can do is effectively farm command points. And when they burn them up, they don't really have good ways of getting them back.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Space Wolves are up there. If you like moving around Marine bodies, you're not going to be disappointed with how Space Wolves work.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to try to play Blood Angels. I might try to put that Blood Angel Space Wolf combo together that I was thinking about doing a couple weeks ago for another. We're probably going to try to film another one with JP this weekend.
So
that'll be a good time.
Just to be clear, you're going to make a list with space vampires and space werewolves.
Yeah, yes. We covered that the last time we said it, Ricky.
Okay.
You were gone.
Okay. My bad. Pretend that you didn't cover that, and everyone laughed like I'm original and funny.
I'm taking this back to 2014.
And
that's optimistic.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, we are enjoying it, and thanks for people watching and being patient as we learn. We are fumbling through this as we go. There aren't really a lot of tutorials out there on how to do this, but I think step 1 is just remembering to record all the rounds.
It seems fairly reasonable.
Yeah, you got most of them.
We did, and I need to get better. Like this time, we were just we're playing in the evening, and we're just kind of going fast, but getting in the rhythm of recording the important die rolls. That's, whatever. We want to make it as entertaining as possible, but also informational and not play like clown list. I mean, unless it's Harlequins. We want to play like some stuff that you might encounter that you're seeing out there in the tournament scene, or give some people some ideas to build some lists around.
Well, anytime you play against JP, you're going to have just, how do I say it? So anytime I play JP, I make him we just stop and we just run through his list, because he always has like this eclectic mishmash hodgepodge of units that somehow
against the grain. Yeah,
he does like he does well, and he just brings stuff that like I have to really look at to kind of get what is getting ready to hit me in the face. So he's always got fun lists.
See how it goes. I did finish my kill team, painting the kill team for Nurgle, posting some shots on that up on Twitter. I think Nurgle is, again, I'm not going to go through it again, but I think it's an incredibly strong kill team list. And I've really enjoyed playing them and modeling, an excuse to like paint up some of those cool Plague Marine models. And there's a Sigmar model called the Lord of Plagues, which when I originally got him, he was a giant tall model. Like compared to all the other. No, not compared to a Primaris size Plague Marine model.
Yeah.
He looks kind of puny.
Yeah. Just looks like a little overweight dwarf compared to the Primaris stuff.
So I made him a little 40k-ish. I put a shoulder pad on him, and I might mount a backpack on him now that I look at it, but putting a plague flail where the axe was, and he's my close combat specialist for the kill team.
Yeah, I hear dirty things about the flail, and that's not just a Nurgle pun. Not just a Nurgle pun.
No, I want a little variety in the kill team. I mean, not all the miniatures are cool, and they've all got character. Patron god of the mouth bellies.
So many mouth bellies.
But all the mouth bellies.
It's been a seriously really cool, it's been a cool hobby project to do, and that's one of like those the secondary benefits of kill team is it's like a real cool excuse to do something you just feel like doing.
Yeah, that's something I'm kind of excited about kill team for, because you guys know me. Generally speaking, I'm pretty focused on one faction, and right after opening the book, I've got all the models I need for that. So to present a new hobby challenge, I'm building a Stormtrooper kill team list, and
that'd be fun. That's an awesome kit.
Yeah, I love that. I love the berets on the heads. Going full beret on these guys, I don't even care that they're not wearing helmets. They're too much machismo for anything less than an awesome beret.
That kit comes with so many additional bits that you could make a host of IG commanders, renegade, psychers, Primaris. I mean, there's all manner of things. Master of Ordnance. I mean, you get 100 different characters out of that box.
I kind of want to cannibalize like the face mask helmeted heads for scouts.
Yeah.
Because
those would look good. Yeah.
Them square jaws on that scout kit. Just not loving it.
Yo, what's going on with those? Like,
well, imagine if you like took a 13-year-old and made them 7 feet tall.
I prefer the older scout models, but the older
the
scout
metal ones
have
those are
all
legit.
the detail on them. You need some rope. You need some grenades. You need like,
those are my favorite.
You need a Zippo. You need like I don't know. They got all kind of.
You need some pouches. I got some stuff in my pouches.
Oh,
you want to buy a watch?
That stuff. All the parts. All the parts you would never put on your Space Marine model are on the Scout model.
And cool like visor thingies on the metal. The metal Scout snipers are still my favorite Scout sniper models.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah, that one that is kneeling down is a really cool model.
Yeah, he looks real cool.
I think I've still got 2 of them somewhere from like when I was like 16. I bought 2 of them, and I never bought any more.
so Kill Team's going strong. I'd love to hear what people are playing for their Kill Team list, and if people send in some pictures of them. Recently I got some pictures of somebody's Harlequin list they're making. It's, oh man. I got sent some pictures today of this dude that really hacked, like your Vrain sword was on a Shadow Seer. I'm like, man, you have invested into this, model.
Yeah.
But that's
awesome.
What? No, it's really cool. It's one of the best things. He's one of my hobby accountability partners, which we talk about all the time. But it's like you need this kind of. You see it like when people send you pictures of their stuff. It kind of like you might not go home right then and do something, but that's going to be one of the things that helps you stay focused on getting stuff done at your hobby bench.
Yeah, it's funny because like the conversion bug kind of bites you. And then it'll get your buddies too, and it's like it spreads. Like I for my friends that play Age of Sigmar, my buddy started using all the extra bits from his Sylvaneth, from his Dryads. The Dryad sprue has like all these things, right? So he started putting those on bases, like the Dryads are forming and like forming up out of like loose.
Wow, cool.
And so like doing stuff like that. And so that's got me converting. So now I'm trying to convert because like Stormcast, they're all human typically. So I'm trying to convert like some Seraphon Stormcast and stuff. So it's funny once part of your group starts converting things up, all of a sudden everybody starts getting on board and having fun with it. So it's always fun to see.
Kill Team is a great example.
Because when you only have to convert 6 models, it's much more approachable than trying to do a whole themed army as opposed. It's an
excuse. I mean, like this, you get a box, you got 10 figures worth of stuff or whatever, and you only need 6 of them. You could royally screw up 3 of them and still be fine.
Yeah, you get to experiment, you get to play around. It's fun.
You can melt something if you want.
Yeah.
Speaking of investment,
I painted a Necron pylon this week.
I think I saw a picture of that.
Yeah, I got my buddy he's recently got into the game. He's gone full tilt. Kill Team 40k. He's gotten he got into the 40k role playing game that just came out, Wrath and Glory.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
And he was an early adopter. Got his copy at Gen Con. So because of that, for figures for the game, he's like almost bought a Chaos Army. Like he's gone. I mean, he's picking this stuff up secondhand.
Yeah.
So, but he's still going off the deep end a bit. But whatever. I encourage it. It's not like I've told him no. Like, yeah, man.
I don't know how many of my friends I've told, like, as I'm selling them the stuff, I'm like, oh, pace yourself, buddy. Like, you don't have to get it all today. It's like when your drug dealer's telling you to slow down, you need to evaluate. So.
Well, I'm kind of in between hobby projects right now. So that's when that's my friends that I paint some stuff for. That's like the prime time to slip things in,
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I've got some you can work on. You should be expecting a package.
There you go.
Oh, man.
You messed up, Paul.
If there's one thing I can count on, it's semi-grumpy photos from Paul of somebody else's models he's working on.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, like when they're sitting over here and hanging out with me while I'm painting or whatever, I'll be cussing a blue streak. They're like, well, man, you don't have to do it. I'm like, no, this is the process.
It's this compulsive thing.
This is all part of if you were to diagram a plan out of the actual steps involved in this. Hating, cussing this model, or more. It's not the model; it's me. Whatever. Like that paint just didn't work out, or when I forget like what the second layer of paint is on something.
Ugh.
Talking about
15 minutes of every hour is allocated to complain, and then you get back on schedule. So that's pretty good.
So I got he brought over the pylon built. He actually had another friend build it, and then I painted it. And I mean, it must have been a day and a half or whatever. It's a great model, lots of cool like detail and stuff on it. But the Necron scheme that I did for him is. You can replicate it. It's a Mefric Dynasty scheme, and it's easy to replicate.
Is that the green and orange?
Yeah,
Dynasty?
green and orange. I use Death World Forest, highlight it with Ogryn camo, just edge highlight it with Ogryn camo, shade it with a Athonian camo shade, and then the orange is like a whatever mismatch of orange that gives me the best OSL that day,
Right. What's within reach?
Yeah, he's all like, wouldn't it be cool if like the center runes glowed on it? I'm like, yeah. That would be cool. I don't know who's going to do that.
That would be pretty cool.
But I
cool if
figured
you painted it yourself.
I figured it out, and that is actually you got this tip from a YouTuber a long time ago. Was like you wanna practice with a safety net, paint stuff for your friends.
There you go.
Because I told him, hey, you complain, you just get in this. I'm just handing it right back to you.
Here you go. It's done.
Yeah, this is done. This is going to get.
Beggars can't be choosers.
He does. He hooks me up. He brings over some models and energy drinks. That's
Heck, I'll start painting for him.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm still working on that monster sponsorship. I'm telling you, it needs to happen.
That'd be awesome. But no, this is so it's been busy, but it's kind of in between hobby projects. So I'm really looking. So that's one of the neat things again to slip in Kill Team and stuff because you get to paint something brand new, try out some new techniques. I think I got my Plague Marine painting technique down now. With I base it the Death Guard green and then I shade it with a Reichland Flesh shade.
Well, I like how the pictures you sent, they're much more dark and grungy than sort of the bright, colorful Nurgle stuff that is so common right now.
I think it's where you put your details, like shading it with the Reichland Flesh shade. I'm able to keep some of that like organic warmth to it without wiping out all the other colors. So you actually see the armor. And then I highlight it with Rakarth Flesh. So it's kind of like a bone color. I'm a real big fan of like this last year of shading or highlighting green with bone colors that I guess on some like primal level have some green in them somewhere.
Maybe some primal level.
Maybe. I don't know.
Feels right. Just go with your heart, Paul.
Yeah, but so I think I'm again able to get to play with this, have what I think is a pretty solid Death Guard color scheme. I need to write it down because I got down to like, how did I do their bases again? Like, what did I dry brush on and then dry brush over? Like, what was the top color? So I spent 15 minutes complaining at myself.
I feel like we've talked about this numerous times to write down your color scheme. Like, is this one of those
think
who
you're going to remember it?
Yeah, no, you're not going to remember it. No, you never do.
Especially
you think you're going.
Yeah, especially so you paint an army and then you get it finished and you don't paint your next set for that army until 6 months from now. Like you're not going to remember what that second dry brush layer was or the base coat or whatever. Yeah.
If only you had like some sort of notepad device on a computer or like an electronic thing you could put in your pocket.
Whenever I forget, I just go back and listen to every show from the last 6 months.
That's it. You're good. That's clearly. You know what? That's it. From now on, the last 2 minutes of the podcast will just be you reciting your most current painting project's color scheme.
There you go.
That way it's out there forever.
Forest, Athonian camo shade, Ogryn camo. The orange is Jokero orange. And actually, the glowing part I glaze with bloodletter because Duncan Rhodes told me to do it.
You always do what Duncan says.
And then I dry brushed the Fire Slayer orange, and then I hit the center with just a little bit of yellow dry brush.
And listeners, next week we will discuss and run down Paul's Blood Angel recipe.
That's right.
Again,
Again, yeah. 'Cause
I think between Paul and myself, we've probably done like 5 different Blood Angel Red paints.
Let me tell you an army that's in
Years.
sass. My Catachin camo that I've painted in different stages of like skill over the last 15 years.
That just seems very Catachin, though. You know?
Look, man. Sometimes you could say like, oh, that's just the style of the army. Sometimes you just didn't thin your paints.
Yeah, brush strokes is not that's not an artistic choice.
Oh man, I know we're kind of digressing a little bit, and right after this segment, I got a segment with Gary Frank to talk about the Dragonfall tournament. Dragonfall, I'll let him explain it, but it's a convention. There are many game tournaments going on that weekend and several 40k things. So maybe if the champs isn't your thing, then you check out some of the other stuff, the team events or the smaller events. Guys, thank y'all for listening and hanging out with me to the previous segment, and y'all chatting with me tonight. We were going to talk about speculations for the next big FAQ. It'd be cool to hear what people think need to be addressed in the game right now. Do y'all have a couple of things that are on y'all's mind?
Command point farming.
And now that we've gotten the lowest hanging fruit,
that's it. That's the only one that bothers me is that. And I say that simply from being a night player. Like it hurts. It hurts a lot. But like me personally, I'm actually concerned a lot about how the Night Castellan is going to. Something needs to be addressed there, right? Like, but I'm scared. Like as a night player, I'm scared that knights are going to get hit with something. Whereas I think the actual issue is the command point farming and not the knights themselves. Because if we can address the command points, then all of a sudden that Castellan with all those stratagems every turn.
See, I don't know
scary.
That level of thing in the game would be addressed in an FAQ. I think that would be more of maybe like a chapter approved thing. Speculation. Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, just setting expectations.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. That may be too much for an FAQ.
Well, one of the things for chapter proof that I'm hoping to see are not just a bunch of ways to make things that are really good worse, but maybe some balance between that and finding ways to make things that maybe are a little mediocre or unimpressive better.
Yeah, I think that's
kind of what I want to hear.
It's always good, like when everything's powerful. Like if everything's powerful, now, I'm not saying like crazy over the top, like some of the other game systems have tried to, where everything was broken. It was who got their broken thing off first. I don't mean that, but like when everything is what we consider playable, like if, in a fighting game, and I'm not saying this is Street Fighter or whatever, but in a fighting game, like the fighting games are better when you can conceivably play any single character in the fighting game and still beat your buddies a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And also, I think your point you were making, Ricky, was that like sometimes a change could be made that's really to address something else, but it just further beats down the other thing, like what happened with Assault for Deep Strike with Blood Angels, for instance. Like to address something else, but kick the legs out from under the BA.
Yeah, address an issue that completely shut down a codex. So it's scary. And like, look, I don't envy those guys. I don't envy the rules writers one bit, because you're never going to make everybody happy, right?
And there's just so many moving parts.
Yeah, it's a lot, and we all get that. That's not going to stop us from going on the internet and complaining, because
we're also providing analysis, right?
That's how the 40k fan do.
Yeah, well, that's how anybody passionate about anything is going to have a passionate response to a change in that. So it's one of those things. I usually just try to manage expectations and not get too hopeful or too mad about anything. So
what we saw in like Kill Team, you mentioned command points and stuff, is that we saw in the Rogue Trader section of things that command points to be specifically used for X faction, like the Star Striders, or like there's a brand of of command points.
Yeah, and that makes sense in that, like, if you have 3 different codexes in your list, to me, some of those, it doesn't make sense that my Imperial Knights are going to generate command points for my Astra Militarum.
But see, we could tell a story that would make that seem totally like they could be plausible, completely plausible in one situation, not plausible in that situation. So
Yeah.
I mean, like you can
we call that
aside.
plausible when
Plausible.
things just like Barkstar in 7th edition. Just throwing that out there. But no, I mean, one of the things though that adds to the game though is this additional bookkeeping, and I feel like if we're going to make a step like that, we need some kind of army play sheet. We need some kind of standardized list format where we can clearly organize these things together and keep, all of the green things in the same pile and the red things in the same pile. Because right now, it's a little bit like organized chaos when it comes to trying to get a unified way of tracking all this information. So if we're going to come up with only these command points can be put here, here, or here. I mean, I just feel like we need some more support on the front end, from the game itself. Like, whether it's some kind of tracking pad or whatever, an app. Make it an app. Everybody does apps these days. They're wonderful.
Oh God, I don't want an app. I don't like technology being brought into my game. That's just me. That's preference. But I get what you're saying. But
you're talking on the internet.
We're deep into speculation. I mean, that would be like to even suggest that something might change with how command points function or whatever. That's not. I don't think it's within the scope.
No,
could be wrong.
I would rather
want to see the game
change.
become. Yeah, I don't want to see more bookkeeping. That's something we definitely don't want. Like, we already, with ITC missions and all this stuff all these tournaments now with all these secondaries that we're picking and all the stuff we're already dealing with the game with stratagems, command points, missions. I do not want to see more bookkeeping because I can barely keep it together to play a game as it is. So, but other than that, other than like the command points, like, is there anything you're expecting to see?
Well, I would like to see some Inari changes. I mean, sensible changes. I don't want Inari to suck or anything like that. I think that it's a cool idea and it's a cool faction, but it's very clunky the way that armies, and it requires a lot of kind of mental kung fu about how these things are put together. I think some clarity or an update to Inari would be an amazing change, and maybe add some limitations about what counts for what and who can join and what rules affect who, and just make it a lot more clear, because what's there in the index and what's happened in the FAQs just, it creates a little bit too much of a mess.
Yeah, it could be. Be interested to hear what other people's predictions or wish list for things like a big FAQ whenever we get it would be. Well, guys, that's all I want to talk about tonight. If you guys hold with us, we'll talk with Gary, and then everybody have a good rest of y'all's night.
Cheers. And all you East Coasters, survive that there hurricane, huh?
Stay safe, everybody.
FTN is also on Facebook. Please like us at www.facebook.com/Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to a community organizer spotlight here on Forge the Narrative. I'm joined by Gary Frank.
Hi everybody, how y'all doing?
Gary, man, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
I've got you on to talk about the Dragonfall Warhammer 40k Championship. Now, Dragonfall is a convention. It's a tabletop and digital event going on in your area.
Yep, it's going on out at Elmhurst. This is our third year of running it, and we've actually pretty much tripled in space size over the last year that we had. So it's growing bigger every year.
So people can follow along with us. They can go to dragon-fall.com. And you can see a list of events on the left side. And we're going to be specifically talking about the Warhammer 40k championships. But there are other Warhammer and related, a bunch of events. Just check it out.
Yeah, there's tons of them that are there.
So Gary, you organize events and groups and stuff in your area. I know you said Elmhurst, but where is that geographically? It's in the United States, northern Midwest.
Out by Chicago, Illinois, suburb of Chicago. So, not the bad part, but the good part. So, be nice and safe while you're there.
Up there near the Adepticon area.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much around in the same area. It's about 20 minutes from the Adepticon's location. So
you have a thriving competitive scene up in that area.
Yes, it is. It's getting harder and harder to even place an RTT anymore with all of these high rollers around here.
Well, that's good. I mean, people can come and take a shot, and they know they're going to get some real good competition and good folks. Like,
right.
There are also, I mean, we talk about the competitive side a lot, but some of the people in that area are truly some of my favorite folks in the hobby.
Oh, I appreciate that too. We try to keep it as competitive, but as friendly as possible whenever we go with that. So.
Well, I mean, this is a tournament, so I'm not even steering outside of the competitive side, but you're going to have a good time. You're going to have people to hang out with. I mean, this is a 2-day event. What's the date?
The date is going to be October 19th, 20th, and 21st, because they've got a team tournament for Age of Sigmar. We got a team tournament 40k. You've got all kinds of stuff. Your hobby itch could definitely be scratched there. There's no doubt about that. So
it's a 2,000 point event. 3 detachment limit, basically the match play rules using ITC championship missions.
Right. We went with those because everybody's very familiar with them and you can practice with them.
Just solid missions.
Yep. And I really like the updates that they did to them over there at Frontline Gaming too. It was really good changes, I think.
So and you're saying that people can use codexes and FAQs up to October 15th.
That is correct.
I think that's awesome.
Week before, right?
Yeah. Hopefully I'm crossing my fingers for you, orcs.
And if it's the 16th or something, now we might try and get her because anytime orcs are doing good in the hobby, everything's better. So
the stronger the bad guys are,
right,
in the game, I think it is. It's just you get. I mean, I know people make compromises in their list sometimes, but it's fun when you have like a strong kind of narrative feel driving it, and when the bad guys are stronger, the good guys have context and everything's neat.
Right. I agree completely, being primarily a Xenos Tyranid player. So
you say you're going to be using some chess clocks.
We are. And the way that those are going to work is, day one, we will take a look around, and this isn't to pick anybody out. I wanted to stress that at the beginning. But if we go across the table and you've got like 240 models around there, we will talk to you and go, hey, you have a large amount of army, and especially your opponent has the same one. You guys might want to consider using chess clocks just so you get a fair amount of time on each person, and there's no contingents afterwards of, well, he got twice as much time as I did, or she, whatever the case.
This is a 5-round tournament, 3 hours per round, so plenty of time,
right,
to actually try to get your games in.
Absolutely. And another thing I want to put too, we've got one of the better trophies that are out there too. At the very bottom of the page, if you go, you can see Mike Laggers there with Tony Griponda, who won in 2016. So that's actually a trophy that's got an actual bronze dragon on top of it. So it's that's what the pride on that one is for. Hence the name Dragonfall and so forth came from. So,
all right, man, that does like a pretty cool trophy. How do you guys do your prize structure? What is the depth of prizes? What are people playing for over the course of the weekend?
So what we do is we do best overall, the typical ones: best overall, best general, best sports, painted and theme, and then we also are going into best faction. We might even be delving into where you get best Blood Angel or best Imperial, or best Astra Militarum or best Dark Eldar, and those would be like medals that you would have. So we're trying to give something for everybody out there, and the biggest one that we try to bank on is the sportsmanship one, because that's what Mike Lager is the founder of Dragonfall. That was his whole basis behind it, and originally he's like, we need to be a friendly event and have all of the lists pre-okayed before they come in. And then we talked about it after a while. I said, let's just create more, because whenever you have that come in, some people's version of a friendly list and other people's version are vastly different.
It's so weird that we all can't really agree on what that means.
So, I think the tournament structure we have fine. The gentleman ones and all of that, we try to make it where there's something for everybody and just continue to grow. So
that's good. What's the player cap on this?
We can go up to 70 or more. We have plenty to make it up to, I think Mike said around between 80 and 100. It's just a matter of terrain. So, we'll have room for you.
So if you're coming, let them know so they can make sure they have the best quality tables for you.
Right. Absolutely. The terrain we have is pretty good too. We had, a guy named Dan Biello, which was with Blood Art Studios around here, make some. Greenleaf made us some from a while ago. And of course, we've sat in his garage and made some of ourselves. So, you'll have a fair amount of terrain, so it's fair as well.
That's one of the most grindy chores as an organizer is making sure the terrain is good, but it's such a factor in the games.
It is, and I didn't really realize it because we just had Chicago Open. We just had that here too last weekend. It was a GT level. We made it at 28 the first day, so we were good. And then afterwards, it was like, hey, now what do we do with all this terrain?
There you go. Run another big event. That's what's going on.
Right. My current family storage shed is halvesies now with terrain and family heirlooms. So
that's another grindy thing for organizers is understanding family.
Right, absolutely.
But I mean, that's really cool. You putting it all in. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said you're kind of a community organizer and leader in your area. And I see a real active groups on Facebook. So if people are in that area or just want to know what's going on in that scene, what are a couple of the most active groups in that area where people may be able to connect with folks or find out information about this event?
The most active one for 40K is Chicagoland 40K, Chicago Space Land 40K on Facebook. We've got almost 400 members that are in there now, and we post not just me, but Jeremy, which is a friend of mine, we work together to do those. We post all of the ones around the area, and it's not just to us. If anybody has an event, they can post it on there. We're not trying to hoard all of them. So
he's a good dude. He just started a podcast recently also. I mean,
he did. I have that with him on Wednesday, Command Points.
Yep. Yeah, good show.
Yeah, that's the main show. They want to be that one to go through, and then there's Windy City Realm, which is Zach. I always screw up his last name, so I'll just go with Zach. That's for the AOS side of things that he has on there.
You guys are running. You mentioned the AOS team tournament. There's going to be some other. I think there's a lot smaller 40K events.
Oh yeah, there's we have Shadespire. We've got Warhammer 40K doubles, which is friendly. That's a 2-day as well. Warhammer 40K Gentlemen's Tournament. There's Warhammer 40K Combat Patrol, narrative, everything. We're trying to gear it up there to chase the big guys around with Adepticon and LVO and all of those.
How many people came last year to the 40K singles event?
Last year we had 44, and the first year we had 34. So we're growing by 10 each year. If we can get above 60 this year and hit the that major point, it'll be a big accomplishment for us because I think that's the draw. It's
worth it. I mean, I know we've been talking up the kind of the scene and everything, but you guys, you build great looking armies. You play competitively. You like hanging out and being friendly. I mean, it's kind of what we all aspire to.
Right.
And this, or what we want, how we choose where we want to go, is, or at least that's what I do anyway, is based on those components. The cool armies I'm going to see, the cool people I can hang out with, and then the tough games, the competitive games.
Right. I remember when I first moved out here and I got back into 40K and me and my buddy were playing in the garage and I'm whipping him every week. And then I read about this AWC tournament that they used to have at the bunker down in there. And I'm like, I'm going to go to that and clean up. And I played round one. I played pajama pants. Let's just say I didn't clean up. Let's just say I got cleaned up. So then I played Elliot, which is another friend of mine, who's now my dentist, and I got cleaned up on that one too. So it was like, all right, well, I'm in the right spot if I want to get better.
That's pretty cool, man. Well, is there anything else people need to know about this event other than go to dragon-fall.com? How do they register? Do they register on the website? What's up?
They register on the site, and at the bottom, if you have any questions, you can email it to me. You can become a member of the Chicagoland 40K. Ask any questions you have about the event there as well, and I can take care of it from that. And one thing that I'll give the promise to myself, to the community, you show up there to play, we're going to have a good time. And we're going to make it one of the funnest events that you've been to. That's the goal. So,
Gary, I think that's very noble. Thanks for coming on and talking to me about it.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Baby in the corner.